morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Noah Raford. As mentioned, I'm the Chief Operating Officer for an organization called the Dubai Future Foundation, and the Futurist-in-Chief for the Dubai government. This is the second time I've been in Poland, the first in Krakow. The first time was 3 weeks ago. I was passing through on a trade delegation, and I thought, there's something really interesting happening here. I've got to come back and find out more. So thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, ministers, honored guests, for having me here and giving me the chance to share a little bit about our view on the future from perhaps a different perspective in Dubai, and to share with you some of the approaches which we're taking, what we like to call 21st century approaches to 21st century challenges. So imagine an organization, kind of a superhero organization. An organization that works with some of the best minds in the world, no matter where they're from, to develop, test, and apply some of the most exciting next-generation technologies on the issues that matter most to the world. Imagine this organization is a little bit like a cross between Disney, DARPA, and the minister's office. Now imagine this organization is in a country which has overcome most of the challenges of 20th century development and is turning its attention to the issues of the 21st century for which there are no easy solutions, for which there are no best practice examples that you can draw from, and the kinds of challenges that all of us are going to have to face in the next decade or two. So this organization, I would like to posit, is the Dubai Future Foundation. We're a wholly government-owned foundation. We spun out of the Prime Minister's office 2 years ago, and our board is comprised quite uniquely of most of the most important federal ministries, including the Prime Minister's office, the most important local government offices, including the police, immigration, transportation, energy, etc., and all of the big state-owned corporations. And our mandate is very simple. Integrate and synthesize the innovation activities across all of these sectors, and to try to develop transformational solutions which help Dubai and the UAE create new economic sectors, new ways of doing business, and new mental models or understandings of what might make us successful in the future. But the important thing here is this isn't just an exercise for the UAE, because that country, as I mentioned, is the United Arab Emirates. But the approach that we're taking here is trying to tackle challenges in ways that are going to provide value for the rest of the world. So Dubai is an interesting place to explore these issues because as a country, the UAE is just a little bit over 45 years old. When the country was founded in 1971, one of the founding fathers says it was a small country but had big dreams. There were only 45 college graduates in the entire country when it was founded. There was no universities, just one high school, practically no roads, and only one hospital. And in the 45 years since the country was founded, the UAE has become one of the most successful economies in the world. It has some of the highest ranking development indices as measured by our traditional 20th century approaches to development, infant mortality, education, educational achievement, GDP per person, etc. It also is one of the major world crossroads, has the world's busiest airport, over 76 ports in operation around the world. It's one of the world's most visited and diverse cities. There are 2.5 times more people that visit Dubai Mall every year than the entire city of New York. Right? There's over 240 different nationalities living in Dubai alone. And I like to joke there are more nationalities living in Dubai than there actually are nations on Earth. So it's this interesting test bed of a crossroads of old and new, east and west, north and south, old industry and new industry, religious and secular, different cultures, different religions, different creeds, all working together, integrating and experiencing what does the 21st century look like. This is important to consider because we're looking at this at the beginning of what many have called the Fourth Industrial Revolution. We would agree that most of the most successful countries in the last 100 years are those that have identified, participated, and benefited from these successive waves of new ways of doing things, from steam to electricity to automation and ICT. And now, as we sit at the beginning of the integration of the digital, physical, and biological worlds coming together to create potentially one coherent, programmable operating system, it's essential that countries understand and participate in these trends and are able to actually shape and benefit from them. Because these represent some of the most exciting opportunities of our lifetimes. Fourth Industrial Revolution approaches and technologies and the trends behind them have the potential to cure diseases on a scale we never before imagined, to help us live longer, healthier, and happier lives, help us transform industry, developing unique custom products locally in sustainable and creative ways. To help transform and liberate education, to provide the best education through AI and telepresence and personalized learning to anyone in the world, no matter where you are, no matter what country you were born in, no matter what language you might speak. And perhaps most importantly, to help us address our fundamentally unsustainable relationship to the resources of planet Earth. Help us shift into a new industrial base that is driven by clean and sustainable energy. All of these things are possibilities and the promises of the next decades. However, we also face some existential challenges. Over 50% of the world's population lives in cities. 85% of the world's population lives in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And this is where, according to the UNDP, 90% of the economic growth in the coming decades is going to come from. So we're talking about an extraordinary influx into cities which are primarily unprepared to deal with them. The majority of these cities are coastal as well, which makes the challenges faced by climate change even more acute. You probably realize that in the last 2 years, about 2 years ago, we crossed what many climate scientists agree to be the point of no return for climate change. There's more CO2 in the atmosphere than ever before, and even if we stopped emitting all CO2 today, we're still going to spend our entire lives dealing with the impact of climate change. More expensive food, longer droughts, bigger fires, more intense floods, and this is going to drive extraordinary migration. The OECD estimates that we're going to face between 150 and 250 million refugees by the middle of the century. That's orders of magnitude more than our systems are designed to carry. And of course, those people, ourselves included, are feeling the sense of perhaps inequality or injustice. Those who have felt like they haven't benefited from the benefits of globalization in the 20th century. And this is expressing itself in anger, frustration, and indeed political instability and violence. I haven't even really started talking about technological unemployment. You've heard the figures around 50% automatability of jobs within the next 10 years. We're facing extraordinary challenges. And in the UAE, we think the future has a shape, and it looks like this. The business models, mental models, governance models, industries, institutions of the 20th century failing at an exponential rate. Whilst the new mental models and business models of the 21st century are also being born at an exponential rate. But these aren't ready for prime time yet in many cases. So our entire professional lives, the lives of our children, the next decade or two is going to be spent dealing with this transition. So how can we successfully navigate this transition? This is the question which we ask at the Dubai Future Foundation and in the UAE. And the traditional answer is startups will save us. Right? I don't mean to talk badly about startups. Certainly there's bringing innovation to markets. Startups are an extremely important approach. But what about government? The stereotype of government is that it's boring and slow. But historically, government has been the one that has taken the long-term, patient investment to de-risk the kinds of transformational technologies and business models which will enable new industrial growth and new sectors to occur. This is before venture capital is willing to get involved, before there's even a market for it. And our approach is that government fundamentally has to take the lead. This is a quote by the UAE Prime Minister. Our job is to effect radical change, not to make gradual improvement. This is the foundation of public policy in the UAE. So I'm just going to take the remaining time, which I have, to share with you some of the ways that we do this in Dubai, because it's not easy. Those of us working in civil service or working in transformational change know that execution is difficult. Vision is difficult. How is it that we've been able to do this here? And why is the UAE perhaps a unique test bed to be able to test these things out for the benefit of the globe? Well, to begin with, we start with stories. We start with storytelling. What is the future going to be like? And how is this going to impact us? How is this going to impact you, your mom, your children, your colleagues at work? This is extremely important because, those of us who have been raised as professionals in the 20th century, we're very good at PowerPoints, at policy reports. But that's not the language that moves people's hearts. You have to touch things. You have to feel things. You have to be able to put yourself in your shoes if you're going to be able to get excited and committed to these kinds of changes. So our primary way of doing this is through a project called the Museum of the Future. You can see it's under construction now. It's opening in Dubai towards the end of 2019. And this is an interesting approach because this is policy by design. We're leading with design and storytelling as a way of engaging people in these immersive, rigorously imagined futures about what the world might be like. This is backed by research, but we're working with technologists and media expertise to create environments, for example, like this automated farm. What's the future of food? In the UAE, we import 80% of our food, right? Well, that's actually not sustainable in the long run. So we have the need in the market to develop automated robotic farming solutions, such as this sort of hydroponic farm in your basement. But that's not very sexy, that's not very interesting. How might that actually be reimagined as a creative tool? So we created this thing. You can walk into it. It's an automatic farm. It uses predictive agriculture like Amazon or Netflix to understand what you might want to eat in 6 weeks. It grows the food just for you, produces it in your basement with 95% less water and electricity, gives you a little sample, prepares it, sends it up to your door by drone or by robot, and allows you to actually experience the most fresh food just for you with zero food waste. This is something which we would all want, fresh, good food. And you can taste it, you can go into it, you can feel it, and you're able to engage with these issues that would otherwise be quite abstract. This is something that people get excited by. The same is true for urbanization. And what we found was not only does this generate increased engagement in these issues, first and foremost with our peers in government and UA leadership, but also with the public. And this creates support for visionary experiments because people want what they see. It generates the demand for the kind of aspirational futures that you're creating. And this has to be the foundation of any kind of policy change, because if you're going to be investing public money in something which you're not going to see the benefits of for years, you have to have some sort of immediate return. And storytelling is the most important way of communicating that in an exciting way. But once we create this demand, then what? Anyone can tell a good story. You have to back it up with execution, to back it up with evidence. So we then work with partners around the world to fulfill this demand with what we like to call bold prototypes. It's just one example. In Dubai, about 1/3 of the economy is based on architecture, construction, or real estate. Like every industry, this is a sector which is being disrupted by digitization and automation, particularly in this case, 3D printing. So we thought, how best to learn about 3D printing in the built environment? Let's build a 3D printed building. So we worked with our partners from around the world. We designed and printed this building, entirely 100% 3D printed concrete, printed in 17 days, installed in 2 days, and it still remains, to this day, the world's first and only fully functional 3D printed building. Some of my staff are in this building right now. We run our think tank out of it. And when we opened this building, the power of a tangible prototype is profound. When we opened this building, the Prime Minister said, "Great, you've built me one. Where's my next 100,000?" So we demonstrated the capabilities of this, and then we worked to set bold targets to follow through with this. So we have a target in Dubai. 25% of every single building will have to be 3D printed by 2030. Starting next year, we changed the building codes. You won't be able to get a building permit for certain kinds of buildings starting next year unless 2% of your building is 3D printed or robotically assembled. And each year, we'll increase that target by 2%, 4%, 6%, 8%, creating a market for these types of transformational tools. Same is true for blockchain. We've done a series of pilot projects and recently committed to having 100% of all government transactions on the blockchain. We're now 2 years into this transformation process, whereby about 2/3 of government of Dubai services are available on the blockchain right now, today. This not only helps government efficiency, but provides all sorts of access for private sector to build value around this in a way which the private sector by itself cannot create. It has to have state leadership. And for genetics as well. We're in the middle of starting a national database of genetics. Dubai is the world's most genetically diverse city. So this will help us do our job from a public health perspective better, but also will be an invaluable scientific resource for the world. It's the world's most genetically diverse city. But that's not enough. Let's say you do these pilot projects. Let's say you set these targets and change laws and regulations. It's not government's job to fulfill them. You have to create markets around them. We have a series of programs where we work with companies from around the world, and this is an open invitation for Polish companies to come join us, and fulfilling these, to take these prototypes and take them to market, to scale them up. Our most recent example of this is something called Area 2071. So I know it's the 100-year anniversary of Poland this year. 1971 was the founding of the UAE. 2071 is going to be the 100-year anniversary. So we're preparing for our 100-year anniversary about 55 years ahead of time now. This is a place where civil society, startups, private sector, and government come together to prototype these solutions, to integrate with the people that are creating the solutions and the people who need those solutions. So I'm going to wrap up. What have we learned from this? Not all this might be applicable for Poland, but there are 3 things which I think might be of relevance for you. The first is around storytelling. Right? Dream no small dream, but they have not the power to stir men's souls. If you cannot provide an exciting, enticing narrative about why you're investing public funds in something which might take 5 or 10 years for you to see the benefit of, then you will not gain the support necessary. However, if you can tell an inspiring story, a tangible, inspiring story, then resources will come to you from the most unlikely places. So this is necessary but not sufficient. Start with a big vision. The other component, particularly from a civil service perspective, is we have to become more flexible in supporting what I like to call these pre-legal solutions. Take a 3D printed building. There were no building codes for 3D printed concrete. Technically, that building is illegal. I like to just think it's not legal yet. But government is the only position who can do the kinds of exemptions and support and experiment necessary to encourage these types of transformational technologies to be deployed and developed. Without government support, we will not be able to make these transitions. And it's up to you, as a bold storyteller in a position of political leadership, to support the kinds of pre-legal technologies and the firms working in them. And trust me, they want it, right? They'll usually pay for it themselves if you give them the opportunity. And lastly, go where you are rare. Don't try to reproduce Silicon Valley. What we found in the UAE is we don't have the depth of background to focus on fundamental R&D, right? But what we do have is access to half the world's population in an 8-hour flight, an extraordinarily flexible regulatory environment, and the ability to test things in the entire citywide scale and then deploy them to 3.5 billion people immediately around you. So we have access to market and regulatory flexibility, but you have access to the ideas and the companies and the technologies that you want to scale. So I would encourage you to internationalize your business, find the partners who want what you have. You're strong in creative industries. You're becoming stronger in electromobility, space entrepreneurship. Focus on those things that you are unique at, and then find the partners internationally who want those things. So I'll just end there because that's a leading question. I would like to invite you to Dubai in the UAE and encourage you, if you are an entrepreneur or a policymaker working in transforming the most important sectors of the 21st century, all of which are heavily regulated, I would encourage you to come to Dubai. Let's develop a partnership together and test and scale your solution, not just for the benefit of Poland, not just for the benefit of the UAE, but for the benefit of the world. Thank you very much.